I just want to say thank you for letting us be able to testify this morning. My name is Jamie Bagley, and I am the Student Body Vice President of the University of Alaska Anchorage, and I'm also currently a senior working on my Bachelor's of Science. I would like to talk about our decision to pass a vote of no confidence in our resolution number 20-05 on October 25th, as well as President Johnson's response. As student representatives for the UAA student body, we respect President Johnson's response to our vote of no confidence, but we feel that he has not fully recognized the bigger picture that we are trying to communicate. This response provides yet another instance in which President Johnson has shown that he's not what is best for the University of Alaska system. President Johnson claims to listen to students and value their place as stakeholders in the university, but has chosen to disregard and belittle our voice rather than use this as an opportunity to start a dialogue. President Johnson was quoted as saying by KTVA, "I think they'll come to understand being in the arena is a very, very important for actually understanding the situation." To clarify, we as students are already in the arena, and without us, there would be no arena. We are directly affected by the actions taken by statewide leadership. This was one of many belittling and dismissive responses to our resolution. Furthermore, as student leaders, we are intimately involved in the operations and structure of the university. We do understand the situation better than most. If the president feels we have no understanding of the process, he has clearly failed to educate us on the situation at hand. We have come to this conclusion with the information we have been given. If this is a misunderstanding of the situation, there has been a lack of communication with upper administration to the student body of which they serve. We are aware of the responsibility held by the president of a university system, and we cannot pretend to understand the full extent of the climate surrounding this position. With all due respect to his position, our members would like to highlight that this response was inappropriate from the president of a university meant to uphold and support students. It is agreed that many students are here at this university to gain experience they have not had before, but to overlook the work and the research of students is not only unbecoming, but disregarding to the institution as a whole. The University of Alaska produces exemplary students and graduates, and it is unfitting for the face of the university to misrepresent as such. This response, in an attempt to discredit, only reaffirms our decision to fully stand behind our vote of no confidence and reiterates that President Johnson is not the right fit for taking the university to its full potential. Thank you.
Next, I have Claire Baldwin.
Members of the Board of Regents, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to testify today. My name is Claire, and I'm the UAA Student Body President. As has already been stated a few times, myself and a half dozen other UAA students paid our own way this week to Fairbanks because we believe in this university and the power and weight our words as students can carry. Today, you will be deciding whether to raise tuition by 5% next year. And while this may not seem like a lot to you, it can mean the difference between attaining higher education and not for many students across the University of Alaska system. When citing reasons for a raise in tuition, President Johnson has used the need for an increased competitiveness with the WICHE average. But what exactly is the University of Alaska competing with? With other universities in Western states? Students who want to and have the means will leave Alaska for school, regardless of our tuition rates. And raising those rates makes us look even less attractive. So what are we competing with? For University of Alaska students, many of us are competing with whether or not to go to school. And by raising tuition 5%, the choice of whether to attend may as well be made for us, because it's not just tuition that will go up next year. It's the fees that are tied to tuition and the differential costs of engineering and management courses. And when President Johnson told us on Wednesday during our Coalition of Student Leaders meeting that this tuition increase will only raise revenue by $7 million and, quote, is a drop in the bucket, why are we placing undue burden on students when, according to our president, it won't actually make that much of a difference? And when we asked President Johnson questions on this statement, we were dismissed because these numbers were found using, again, quote, higher level math, and we apparently couldn't possibly understand. This leads me to my second point, the vote of no confidence our assembly took 2 weeks ago. If you had taken the time to read it, you would have seen the countless instances we cited that led us to that decision. We were not pressured by our faculty or administration to make this vote. It was actually working for months. Months we spent poring over our communication history to find quantitative instances to cite. The feedback we received from President Johnson and many of you sitting around this table was dismissive and disrespectful. But unfortunately, none of you said that directly to us, but rather stated through the media or in the middle of your meeting yesterday in passing. We would like to see moving forward a healthy dialogue between ourselves, the president, and you, the board. Goals you yourself discussed yesterday. When you ask our opinion, actually listen and not dismiss it because it doesn't fall in line with your vision. Use this as an opportunity to mend bridges and actually work on the goals you spent 4 hours discussing yesterday and build back our trust in you. Because without us, the students, there is no university, and we should be your first priority.
Teresa Roble.
Hello again. I know most of you know me. My name is Teresa Roble, and I was the acting chair for the Coalition of Student Leaders. The Coalition of Student Leaders just recently elected a new chair, Audrey Kubrey in the back here. So please treat her with respect. She's awesome. And so a note on students, I'd just like also to thank the student regent that we have here today and all the students also sitting in the back. A lot of them are missing class or going to be late. And a lot of my colleagues from UAA came up on their own money to be here and testify. And for a lot of them, that was their first time. So thank you for listening to them. And so another note, we are told that students are the priority of a university. So please treat them with the respect of those who are the priority. Throughout my time as chair, we've seen a lot of different things. Unfortunately, it was probably not the funnest time to be the acting chair. We saw a declaration of financial exigency where students were fraught with fear about their educational status. We saw a consideration of the UA system moving to a single accreditation, and students and student governments were against this for various reasons. And then we just recently have seen a proposal to tuition increases in which students and student governments also see very little justification except for the knowledge that we are in an unfortunate circumstance. I talked a lot about building bridges yesterday during the workshop, and I want to emphasize that it was on building bridges. At our summit, as we discussed tuition proposals, it was asked how could we as student leaders justify tuition increases to our fellow students, and we were then kind of posed to us, that's the responsibility of student governments to justify to the students that tuition should be increased. And I just like to clarify that role a little bit, and that yes, student government does have a role in playing to dialogue with students and find a digestible way to pass on information that the administration is currently working on to the students. However, we are not the propaganda. It is not our responsibility to tell students what to think. We are to present the information to them, and then we are to hear their reception of it, and then we then represent them for that. So I'd just like to clarify that role. However, as I said yesterday, I do think that there has been a lot of innovation between the relationship between the administration and the students. As I said with like my example with Vice President Lair, I honestly think that there is hope and opportunity. So let's head toward that. Thank you so much.
Next, I have Keon O'Brien.
Good morning, Regents, and thank you for your time. My name is Keon O'Brien, and I am a member of USUAA, and I'm currently pursuing a Bachelor of Music and Music Education at UAA. While there's a lot to talk about today, I'm really wanting to focus on the communication you are having with students in this important decision-making process and USUAA's recent vote of confidence in President Johnson. As I reflected on the events of the summer, I sort of noticed that the university banded together. Faculty, staff, and students from all three campuses, as well as statewide and local administration, banded together to fight against the governor's office at that $135 million cut, and we succeeded. While $70 million is still a lot, I counted it as a victory against that 41% cut. The economic situation in the state, we realized the university has to we have to restructure. We have to change how we're built. This is when I noticed things started to change. You guys keep talking about having student voices at the tables and how you're open to students bringing in their input. Well, we are here. I paid $150 to fly up here and missed 2 days of my classes to make my voices heard. It's obvious that the only voices you want are those that agree with you. I could point out earlier today in the testimonies for former staff members and regents, the 2-minute timer was turned off. As soon as our vice president stepped up, the 2-minute timer was turned back on. After the compact with the governor was signed, and the students increasingly made our voices heard that we are against single accreditation, we were thrown to the wind. And while you decided to postpone discussion on single accreditation and consolidation until 2021, for some reason, it was constantly brought up in yesterday's workshop. I voted in favor of USUEA's vote of no confidence, and I saw this as a last resort. While I understand the stress President Johnson faces, and I do not envy at all the situations you all are in leading this university, I can understand the stress. It does not excuse the exclusion of students in this discussion. We are why the university exists. The university exists to give us the education to go on and get careers and be the future of the state of Alaska. You keep saying that students are the future. Then why isn't the future being consulted on what our future holds for the university? Lack of communication with students and the disregard of our attempts to get our voices heard is inexcusable. And that's the main reason I voted in favor. I found President Johnson's response to our vote of no confidence rude and unbefitting of an executive officer. When I read it, the message I got was that we are young and we are naive and we don't know what's going on. We are young. We're students. It's what we are. We were not naive. Between working 1 full-time job and 3 part-time jobs over the summer, I was still an advocate for the university, following news every single day to get updates. I joined student government just to fight for the university. We know the severity of the situation, and we understand that a vote of no confidence was a last resort, and it was. It was a last effort to try and change the administrative structure to drive the university to a better future. As you move forward, I urge you to look at giving the chancellors more power and delineating their roles as chief executive officers. As you discuss, it is well within your power as the Board of Regents to do so. I have full confidence in Chancellor Sandy's leadership at UAA. Just the short year that she's been here, she has shown that she cares about UAA and the future of the students. She is constantly reaching out to students, holding very, very recurring and often ask the chancellor anything, to open a dialogue with students, get our input. As you may know, the UAA bookstore had to recently downsize and relocate due to movement of enrollment services back to main campus. While this was a struggle for students and administration, Chancellor Sandine made sure that students' voices were heard so the bookstore could still support student success. Chancellor Sandine has been dealing with the same issues that the Board of Regents and President Johnson has on a local level, and has dealt with it without excluding students, unlike President Johnson. As I cautioned you all last meeting, students won't hesitate to leave Alaska for school, and they are the future. I came up here my junior year of high school when my dad was assigned to Joint Base at Waldorf-Richardson. I then decided my spring semester junior year to graduate a year early. UAA was really the only option for me. With everything that's happened, I know many friends who have left UAA or are highly considering transferring. Because of everything going on, it's put me in the state where I have to make the difficult, heartbreaking decision on deciding if I'm going to stay at UAA for my degree, or if I'm going to transfer somewhere else. And I don't want to. I want to stay at UAA. I love the community I have found, and I want to stay and get my degree. But I feel like I don't have a choice to get a quality education in a stable university environment with everything going on. Regents, President Johnson, I urge you in a meeting to sit down and look at USUEA Resolution 2005, our vote of no confidence, and take action. Whether it be making amends on our grievances, we listed them out, we gave examples, look at them, see how we can bend this bridge in the future, moving forward, or deciding if it's best to have somebody else at the helm at our university as we lead it to a better future. Thank you.
Yeah. There's many more. So I have, we've reached our hour, but I'm going to extend the public hearing. I have another sheet of people signed up here, and I will ask people to try to, if you're making testimony that essentially has already been made, if you would try to agree to the previous testimony and then keep your testimony short as possible, just so that we can hear everybody that's on the sheet. And I don't want to suggest that I don't want to hear from you, but I want you to appreciate the fact that we have a very long agenda to get to in the rest of the day. So it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just meant to be respectful of the number of people that are signed up and the agenda that we face. So please honor that, if you will. Next, I have Rose Kruger.
Thank you for extending the testimony so you can hear more of our voices. I know that a lot of my colleagues from UAA flew out here just to talk to you guys face to face. I'm a senior at UAA. My name is actually the first on the authors list for the vote of no confidence. And I mainly wanted to come up here to address the lack of trust that students currently have in our systematic leaders. Because currently the feeling is that the chancellors are the only ones who have our backs as students. And it's not a new feeling. It's something that has started back when we had the School of Education accreditation issues. And it's something that I feel is tied to strategic pathways and the push to consolidation that has been occurring since probably around 2015 even. Because there's been a talk about making it so each university has one thing that they do well, and you can only get that at that university, which it's not a bad idea in itself, but the way that it's been pursued is what we have an issue with. We want to be included in the conversations. We want to feel like our voice and our input is valued. Because if you don't value your students' voices and you don't value your students' input, what's the point of having students? What's the point of having our student governance organizations? And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Carmen Guzman.
Hello. Thank you for all being here today. I'm a second-year graduate student, a writing tutor, and I'm also on the graduate academic board, so you might say I'm pretty involved. I just wanted to touch on how this affects graduate students, and also one group no one has really mentioned are your students in the technical colleges, as well as the ones that are English as a second language learners. Just working at the Writing Center, many don't even know what's going on. And Chancellor Sandine is really good at, with her Ask Me Anythings. That I think is what we mean when students want, they just want it in front of them, someone talking to them so that they really understand what's happening. And I did have some points I wanted to touch on. So, for instance, the school's motto is stories being made every day. And you have many students in the technical college that are coming from other countries. They want to be lawyers, or you have adults in their older age, but they are studying business. They are the ones that run the businesses in the community. And that, I think, is really the type of collaboration and spirit of community that is important in times like these. And so that's why I ask myself how you could be here and be comfortable with your students not being, not even knowing that there is a huge crisis and that we just, we declared financial exigency and then we didn't. Another way of, what you really want is grad students, okay, in this, in your schools. And because grad students are the ones that will come here, get their education, and then continue to build that life. And especially for me, that I'm coming all the way from California, I have nothing to be doing here, but I just basically followed my spirit, and I found my own community here. And it'd be a shame if, for example, like my program didn't exist anymore. And I just want to close with an example. Last year, I was the assistant director of a conference UAA has had since 1995. And this is the first year we're not going to have the conference because not only do we not have enough faculty support, there isn't enough graduate student support, and there isn't enough money. So at the fair this summer, I won a pair of very expensive boots for the winter. And when I remembered I had worked with a girl on this conference, and for our silent auction, she had brought in a bunch of pairs of shoes. And then I realized, oh my God, like this is probably her business, like her mom's business. And the fact that I could support that business and that they had also supported us really, really solidified that spirit of community. And this spirit of community is what makes me want to continue living in Anchorage, continue going to UAA, even though I've considered transferring as well. And also just be here with my fellow colleagues and students that make me feel at home as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, excuse me, next I have Allie Stover.
I want to start by sharing my values and telling you who I am. My name is Allie Stover, and I'm the chair of the Youth Advisory Commission, student ombudsperson, and part of the Seawolf debate team at UAA. I'm a third-generation Alaskan and deeply committed to my community. I value a functional democracy, cultural richness, and access to higher education. Today, I've been given the opportunity to share my voice, and I understand the severity and weight of my words because I'm not only talking about my future, but the future of my peers and the stability of my home. I'd like to share two examples from a macro and micro level regarding how decisions made at the Board of Regents are affecting communities at ground level. And then I will follow with my solution of advocacy. On the macro level, on August 29, 2019, we had a town hall for the budget cuts in UA at our Anchorage Public Library with Assembly members, UA Staff Council, UAA Faculty Senate, USUAA, and alumni. This was open for everyone to attend. 150 community members interacted with this event. Unanimously, they voted for UA admin to slow down the decision-making, not in favor of single accreditation, and to maintain the uniqueness of UAS, UAF, and UAA. Now, when we have unanimous decision-making, that is seriously impactful and needs to be heard. On the micro level, the Youth Advisory Commission is the most diverse municipal commission. We have incredibly bright and motivated students. They look to me and ask if they will be able to attend UAA when they graduate. And I honestly can't offer them the comfort and stability these bright students deserve. I didn't even know if I'd be able to return back to school this semester. I've seen my friends and mentors participate in a mass exodus as we feel like we have no other choice. Now that I've gone over some micro and macro level of examples in our communities, I'd like to present you my solution of advocacy. I support decentralization for the security of our accreditation, efficiency, and to follow the national trends of other universities, and to also build healthy competition and cooperation between our universities. Thank you to our Faculty Senate and Chancellor Sandine for platforming and empowering our voices. We do not mean to be disrespectful when we call out instances of being dismissed by UA administration. We traveled hundreds of miles in exchange to have barely 100 seconds of having a seat at the table. I agree that UA needs to be reformed, that sacrifices and reductions need to be made, but that conversation must seriously involve our community. Thank you.
Where'd Allie go? Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for stating that we made these decisions, because we are the system. We make the decisions. And so if the president, and he executes our decisions. So when you're talking about the system, it's the regents. So, and you stated it correctly, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Graziano.
Good morning. My name is Tuan Graziano. I'm a member of the USUA organization, UAA student government body. First of all, of course, I'd like to thank you. It's really amazing to have this opportunity to speak directly with you and provide direct input. Really, what I wanted to begin and start off is that recognition that so many of my fellow students, including myself, are here on our own money, on our own time, and away from our own classes or work, so that we can commit to being here and being involved and having a voice and showing that voice. When it comes to the Board of Regents, you have mentioned time and time again that the president is an extension of the Board of Regents, that he is your executive officer, and that he upholds your values and principles. When it comes to that, the president has time and time again refused to really consider the voices of students and faculty, and as well as take into consideration what we are trying to communicate to the rest of you. Is that really your principles and values, that our voices should be belittled and dismissed, that a faculty that we work closely with should also be belittled and dismissed? Yesterday, I heard many attitudes and values where just because the faculty and the students might have some kind of input or selfish desires in terms of their voicing of no confidence and how they feel about the university and the president, that they should just be dismissed. What are we at? What is the point if we as an institution, as the Board of Regents, ask for student and faculty input, but just because we don't like it, we decide to belittle their voice and their input? That isn't the way that I think that you as a board should be going in the direction of. Included in that is student voice and input, saying that time and time again that tuition increases are preventing them from choosing UAA or any of the UAF or UAS campuses as their post-secondary education choice. Time and time again, every tuition increase, we lose students. I've worked closely every year with hundreds of high schoolers, and each of them always say that stability within the university system and tuition costs are really the two main reasons why students don't go to UAA or UAF or UAS. I have friends who teach in high schools in the Anchorage School District who mention time and time again, those are the two main reasons that high schoolers bring up when it comes to enrolling in one of our higher education systems. I think it's critically important that you really take the time to look at what these tuition increases will cost, not in terms of revenue, but in terms of students. There are so many brilliant and energetic students that I have the absolute wonderful pleasure and privilege to work with every single year. And every single year that tuition is increased, we lose some of those students. And I can't imagine losing so many of those students. We are going to be a shadow of our former selves if this keeps happening. I really, really wish that you guys took the time to really consider the ramifications of this tuition increase and the ramifications of losing so many bright students who do want to stay in Alaska, who care about Alaska, like myself and my fellow colleagues here. I think that in the end, that faculty and students do have a voice. We are trying to show that voice. And I think there is positivity in our attempts to reach out and communicate. There has been instances where we have been able to communicate with the Board of Regents, with the president, with the statewide administration. And if we had more of that, like we've had in the past, for example, recently with Vice President Paula Layer here in regards to tuition, that would be the way forward. And that is what we encourage and that is what we desire. And I would like to say that despite the efforts of the president and some of the regents of this board to diminish the identity of the University of Alaska Anchorage, I believe that faculty and staff, my fellow students and I, will always and forever be proud to be Seawolves.
Thank you. Josiah Nash.
Hello. Hi. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I come before you today, unlike some of my colleagues, to not talk about a specific policy or individual within our university system, but rather speak about two fundamental principles, both involving decentralization. Over the past several years, during my time in UAA student government, I've seen members of this statewide governance system make comments that have hinted members of the student body or individual universities are either inexperienced, uneducated, or unintelligent to a degree that we do not know how to make or advise the board in making decisions for ourselves. Such comments, including recent ones, deeply worry me. This is because these beliefs go against everything we stand for as Alaskans, Americans, and citizens of a republic. Our political system was founded off the very notion that because humans are rational creatures, we indeed have the ability to make decisions for ourselves. In fact, the founders of our country believed that decisions are best made when those who the decisions are being made about have a say in the deliberation. That we can make better decisions in our local assemblies than those in London, hundreds of miles away. This is the first principle of decentralization I urge the board to consider while conducting their business, that of devolved governance, decentralization among physical locations, also known as the vertical separation of powers. The second and final principle I would like the board to consider is a counterpart to the vertical separation of powers, the horizontal separation of powers, or decentralization among the organs of the governance system. Particularly in the case of UA, this would encompass the idea that the board should be the institution to collectively produce new policy, not the president. Well, the board currently does this. I question if too much direction is sought from the president. This fundamental principle is raised by James Madison in Federalist Number 47. Quoting French philosopher Montesquieu, Madison explains, when the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person, there can be no liberty. Now, it may be in this case that the role of the board and the president are slightly different from the traditional US model Madison speaks of. With that being said, the idea behind of what Madison speaks remains the same. Policy is best created with the collective wisdom of multiple people than with a single individual. I have personally witnessed this working in student government. We will start with one idea for resolution, and by the end, you will have a resolution that is a result of multiple ideas. Lower quality ideas are usually alleviated by the other members of the body. Ultimately, we produce very high quality resolutions. I truly believe if the board fully embraced this model, UA would be better off. Please consider these two aforementioned principles when making governance decisions for our students, faculty, and staff. These principles are timeless, derivative of natural right theory, and can apply to most situations throughout history and culture. Thank you for the time I have here today to speak to you. And I hope our three universities have a bright future moving forward. Thank you.
I think when I went from one sheet to the other, I inadvertently skipped Brooke Hansen. Is Brooke still here?
Hi, my name is Brooke Hansen. I'm a junior transfer student at UAA, and I'm a senator at UAA. First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity for public testimony because I think it's an important part of this process. But what I'd really like to talk about is a big error that I've seen in the entirety of this process, which is I feel like there's not a good route for communication between student governments and including staff to you, the board of directors, and our president and vice president. I guess earlier this week during the coalition meeting, I had the opportunity to ask Vice President Lair what the process is for reviewing documents and other correspondences that student governments make with the president's office and the rest of statewide administration. And I feel like there isn't a clear process that allows us students to have a two-way communication system that is reliable with our decision makers. And I don't feel like I want to sit here and criticize you, President Johnson, because that's not my point, but I just feel like there needs to be more of an open and honest communication dialogue throughout the entire process from the point when an idea is pitched to the end result when you guys vote. Because I feel like what happens is you make an idea or you make a proposal, and then eventually we hear about it through one route or another. And then what happens is we take a couple of weeks to think about it and then try and write a resolution or pass a letter. And then by then we're up against a deadline and we don't always hear back, and there isn't always some sort of opportunity for us to go back and forth. And so what I feel like needs to happen is we need a better process for this. We need something where we can sit down and have face-to-face communication and dialogue over what's going to happen, so that way we can reach more of a consensus, and then maybe some of this animosity and angst would disappear. And the main issue for us students is that we don't feel heard. And I don't mean to say that you necessarily intentionally were dismissive, but that's how it came across to us students, because we never really heard back throughout this process for tuition increases, and eventually we ended up passing a vote of no confidence, which I understand that that's never fun, and I wouldn't wish to be in your position, and I understand that a lot of tough decisions really do have to be made, but we need to be able to have better communication, because otherwise things aren't going to get resolved, and it's never going to be a cohesive relationship that we're going to have. And so I ask that, maybe not today at the board meeting that you discuss this, but that eventually throughout the next couple of months, throughout the rest of the semester, that we sit down and we have a conversation about how we can better have open and honest communication, where, as the moderator put it yesterday, we can sit down and have an opportunity to listen in order to change our perspective. And then we might get somewhere. And that's really what I'm asking for. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, I have Calvin, and I can't quite read the last name, so you'll have to help me.
My name is Calvin Zulo. I'm a member of student government at UAS in Juneau and vice chair of the Coalition of Student Leaders. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I want to speak on two things very quickly. There was some discussion yesterday of rebuilding trust between the board and the larger university community. Any action you take to empower chancellors would be a great way to start that. The chancellors are visible and accessible to campus communities in ways that the regents and the president simply aren't and can't be. Also, there will be discussion today about increasing tuition. I have concerns about that. A very small percentage of UAS students are traditional first-time four-year students who might be choosing between UA and out-of-state schools. UAS is the best and often the only choice we have for getting an education, but it won't be if we can't afford it. There are already students and student leaders I know who won't be able to. I'm sure that the same is true at other universities. Additionally, I'm not convinced that tuition increases will offset declines in student enrollment. The tuition increase might itself exacerbate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it, I'm not sure that I'm having trouble with the handwriting. Kevin.
Thank you for your time today, you guys. I'm Kevin Parrish from Ketchikan, Alaska, and I am the president of our campus, a very small campus, and I thank you for your time. I've heard a lot of people speak today, and I heard a lot of people speak yesterday, and it seems like everybody's in the firing range. We have a captain and we have a ship, and this captain needs to run this ship. We have the duties for all of you to figure out how we're going to do that. And in Ketchikan, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are leaving, students are scared, and everybody is worried. And the communication needs to be open, and it needs to be strong. And after listening yesterday, I felt even more afraid. We need to take away that fear. We need to rewrite the ship, and we need to get moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Steve Frank.
Hello. So I have a little trouble talking in front of small groups for some reason. So I'm just going to read off this like I did it last time. So as you guys might remember, my name is Daniel Vaziri. Last time I was up here with Bernard Ayoto and Aiden Ernest. So after we spoke to you guys, I spoke to Chair Davies and President Johnson in person off to the side, and they said they are doing things to better the student involvement. But I said it doesn't matter to both of them. They need to show us what they are doing. Doing things behind our back isn't right. Do these things with us. I am pleased to let everyone know that I've been updated that our voice on the board, Regent Garrett, has been acknowledged and recognized respectfully. At the last meeting, Regent Beretta came up to us when we were standing on the side and told us that we will have a chance to speak, as is the students that were present. But Regent Hughes tried to keep us from speaking. I understand it wasn't part of the meeting, but it's not bad to hear the students' voices. We need more regents that will actually listen to us and not just hear us. Trust is not hard to accomplish. I've heard a lot of people say that it is hard to accomplish and stuff. It's not. All you have to do is listen to us, include us. And lastly, actions have consequences. As students don't know what actions are happening and we have no idea of what consequences are coming our way. Please include us more and more. And if you need help on how to include us, come and ask us. Last thing I would like to ask is all the students present just to stand up so people know who they can go to student-wise.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge, I appreciate the students traveling up here and being here for yesterday's meeting and listening to that and then your testimony this morning. So thank you for making the effort. Next, I have Bernard Ayoto.
Hello, thank you all. So my name is Bernard Ayoto. I am a fourth year undergraduate student studying political science and minoring in justice, set to graduate in spring 2020, hopefully, if I can get all my assignments done. I sit here before you today on National First Generation College Day as a first generation student set to graduate, hopefully by the end of the semester or next semester. Furthermore, I sit before this board as a student veteran a few days before Veterans Day to acknowledge that the pleasure I've had at UAF as a Purple Heart campus, looking out for the needs of student veterans. Thank you. So there's a couple points that I want to address. Firstly, I want to address the role of student governments and my understanding of it. I want to make sure that everyone understands that student governments are designed to represent the voice of the students and not the administration. If we either individually or collectively express confusion, concern, or frustration with the decisions or messaging that comes from the system-wide office or at our universities, it shouldn't fall directly on us to just propagate that those messages and those statements. It requires administrators from system-wide and our universities to help us better understand and communicate those concerns that we're expressing on the student side. If communication has become blurred or obfuscated, it cannot simply fall on us to fix those lines of communication. It requires consistent work from the administration, the board, and our universities to make sure that those lines are fixed. If competence is broken, it is not up to us and only us to mend that damage. It requires this to the board when it came about. To that point about student veterans, when you're looking into online classes, consider the fact that student veterans, when they choose their colleges, in order to get their full VA benefits, they need to have at least one in-person class. So a push towards online-only classes and a continual push to more online-only classes will further disincentivize student veterans from pursuing education in Alaska, because in order to get their benefits, they need to make sure that they're taking in-person classes as required by the VA. So please take that into consideration with everything that you're considering as well.
Thank you. Next, I have Joe Kuechly.